The stars above Vera Prime fractured into streaks of fire as the Kethri fleet tore through the void. Their entry was methodical, exact, like blades cutting reality. Dozens of warships slid into formation without a word spoken. For centuries, that sight had meant one thing across the Orion Arm: surrender or annihilation. From the command deck of the Invictus, Captain Adrian Voss studied the tactical display. Red icons bloomed across the holomap, multiplying, spreading like a contagion. 50 ships, at least, battlecruisers, escorts, carriers. Enough to erase Vera Prime and the 6 million colonists below. He said nothing for a long moment. His crew needed his calm, not his fear. Only when the silence grew heavy did he speak. So this is what invincible looks like. Ensign Mara, barely out of academy, muttered from her station. They say no one's ever beaten them, sir. Whole species disappeared. Stories don't win battles, Voss replied. His voice carried no sharpness, only iron steadiness. People do. The Invictus thrummed beneath them, a leviathan of Terran steel. She was humanity's first true heavy battleship, an experiment as much as a weapon. Her frame stretched nearly 2 kilometers, wrapped in composite armor, rail batteries and missile pods bristling along her spine. Even idle, she radiated power. Yet one ship against 50, what did that matter? Commander Hale, his first officer, broke the silence. Admiralty's orders were clear, Captain. We're here to observe and record. The fleet wants data, not martyrs. Voss's eyes never left the red tide advancing across the map. And what do you think happens to the colony if we follow those orders? Hale hesitated. She was pragmatic, cautious, and painfully aware of numbers. There'll be a lesson. One colony sacrificed might save dozens when Earth learns the Dominion's methods. That's not a lesson, Voss said flatly. That's cowardice written in blood. On screen, Vera Prime's orbital stations broadcast panic signals. The governor's voice crackled over comms, desperate and furious. Invictus! This is Governor Aaron! You swore to defend us! Where is your fleet? Where are your reinforcements? Voss answered evenly, though his chest tightened at the plea. Governor, we are all you have. Prepare your shelters. We'll hold as long as we can. Her reply was a broken whisper. One ship against them? One ship is enough, Voss said, though he didn't know if he believed it. Hale leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a low growl. If you defy command, you'll be court-martialed, if we survive. Voss finally turned to her, eyes hard. Then let the historians write that we broke orders to save millions. A black mark on my record is lighter than 6 million graves. The comms officer, wide-eyed, reported. Kethri Vanguard ships detaching. Fast approach. 3 destroyers and a cruiser. The bridge tensed. Kethri Vanguard meant the opening cut, a precise strike to cripple defenses before the main fleet moved in. Against most worlds, it ended the fight before it began. Bring the rail turrets online, Voss ordered. Targeting solutions distributed. No staggered fire, we hit with everything. The crew moved, hands flying across controls. Alarms pulsed through the deck as the Invictus's vast systems roared awake. Shield capacitors whined, missile racks spun to readiness, and the cavernous reactor bay pulsed like a heartbeat. Voss took a breath, steadying himself. He remembered academy lectures describing the Dominion, a culture bound by tradition, by unbroken doctrine. They fought as their ancestors had fought, perfected through centuries. And perfection could not be challenged, or so they claimed. The Invictus would test that myth. Enemy within range, Mara reported. Her voice trembled, then steadied. Lock batteries 1 through 5. Fire! The deck shook as rail cannons spat fury into the void. Tungsten slugs screamed at near-light velocity, invisible until they struck. 2 destroyers buckled instantly, hulls ripping open in blossoms of fire. The cruiser reeled, shields flickering under the sudden torrent. Gasps rippled through the bridge. No one expected that kind of impact, not against the so-called invincible. Direct hits! Mara shouted, disbelief edging into exhilaration. Hale's knuckles whitened around her console. Don't get cocky. That was their first wave. The rest are coming. But Voss allowed himself one grim smile. They bleed. His voice carried across the deck, steady as steel. Remember this moment. They bleed. The crippled cruiser spat a desperate volley, glancing off the Invictus's shields. Automated counterfire reduced it to shards. Silence followed, brief, heavy, stunned. The crew's fears shifted. Not gone, but tempered, reshaped into something sharper. The comms officer whispered, as if afraid the enemy might hear. Sir, no Terran ship has ever destroyed a Ketheri warship before. Then today we set precedent, Voss answered. His tone was calm, almost conversational, as if this had been inevitable. Outside, the rest of the fleet adjusted. The great phalanx of Ketheri ships paused, their formation rippling with uncertainty. They had expected to crush resistance instantly. Instead, they had lost 3 ships in minutes. In the heart of that fleet, aboard the Dominion flagship, High Marshal Zorith Varek watched with unblinking reptilian eyes. His clawed hand tightened on the armrest of his command throne. One Terran vessel stands against us? And dares to strike first? His adjutant bowed, voice careful. The reports are confirmed. Their weapons are effective. Zorith's tail lashed once, controlled fury. Effective against the careless. We will show them what perfection means. Advance all ships. Back aboard the Invictus, sensors flared as the bulk of the Dominion fleet surged forward. The news tightened. Captain, Hale said, low and urgent. We can't hold against all of them. One victory doesn't change mathematics. No, Voss admitted. He stood tall, eyes fixed on the swelling tide of red icons. But it changes belief. And belief wins wars. The holomap bloomed red as the Dominion bore down. On the colony below, millions waited in silence, shelters trembling under evacuation alarms. Voss clasped his hands behind his back. His voice was steady, unshakable. All hands brace for engagement. This is not a retreat. This is history. And with that, the Invictus surged forward into the storm. The wreckage of the Ketheri vanguard drifted silently, fire and frozen shards scattered across the void. For the first time in history, Dominion hulls smoldered under Terran guns. On the Invictus's command deck, the shock lingered like static. Captain Adrian Voss stood unmoving, hands clasped behind his back, eyes locked on the swarm of red icons converging. The kill changed nothing in numbers, the odds were still impossible. But the bridge crew looked at their captain differently now. They no longer whispered about legends. They waited for his next order. The sensor chief's voice cracked through the hush. Multiple wings inbound. At least 24 strike craft squadrons. Fast and coordinated. Commander Hale's jaw tightened. They'll try to gut us before their heavies arrive. Let them come, Voss said. His tone was calm, but his eyes flicked across the tactical display, already calculating. Adjust turret arcs. Load the flak coils. We'll cut them apart before they close. The ship hummed as targeting systems reoriented. Automated turrets locked into firing sequences, rows of defense batteries swiveling like watchful predators. Ensign Mara murmured from her console. They're fast, too fast. How do we track? By expecting what they don't. Voss cut in. He pointed to a cluster on the map. Ketheri doctrine demands symmetry. They'll split into equal wings. That predictability is their weakness. Target their patterns, not their speed. Moments later, the void erupted. Squadrons of needle-shaped fighters streaked toward the Invictus, their engines leaving white scars across the dark. Dozens became hundreds, a tidal wave of steel. Engage, Voss ordered. The Invictus unleashed a storm. Flak bursts blossomed into expanding spheres, rail turrets hammered precise lanes, and automated point defense stitched glowing threads across the black. Fighters disintegrated in swarms, their perfect formations unraveling under withering fire. Confirmed kills 30, 50, 70. Mara's voice sharpened into disbelief. They can't break through. Hale barked. Stay sharp. One gets past, we're finished. But the board remained clear. The Terran gunners shredded squadrons with an efficiency no Dominion tactician had prepared for. The Ketheri prized rigidity. Terrans thrived in chaos. Still, the pressure mounted. A flight of strike craft pierced the perimeter, diving straight for the battleship's dorsal hangar. Explosions tore across the hull plating. Warning klaxons blared. "Boarding torpedoes!" shouted the tactical officer. Voss's voice cut through the noise. "Seal bulkheads! Deploy countermeasures!" A ripple of detonations followed as interceptors launched from hidden bays, neutralizing the intruders before they could pierce the ship's belly. The hull groaned under strain but held. The crew erupted in cheers, short, sharp, half in disbelief. Voss raised a hand, silencing them. "Save your celebration. The real storm hasn't hit yet." Across the void, the Dominion's main body shifted. The disciplined wedge broke formation, a sign of agitation. On his throne aboard the flagship, High Marshal Zorath Varek watched with slitted eyes. The holoscreen before him displayed his vanguard's wreckage, the annihilated fighter wings, the insolent Terran ship standing unbroken. "A single vessel disrupts centuries of perfection," Zorath muttered. His voice was low, venomous. His adjutant bowed, nervous. "High Marshal, perhaps their weapons are unorthodox." Zorath's tail snapped against the floor. "Weapons are tools. Doctrine is law. This captain fights with desperation, nothing more." He leaned forward, his crest rising in cold fury. "Bring the heavies forward. We will bury them under inevitability." The Ketheri fleet advanced. Dozens of cruisers and battleships loomed, their hulls jagged and black, bristling with centuries of refinement. They moved as one, a wall of death. Back on the Invictus, the display turned crimson. Hale whispered, "God help us." "God favors the bold," Voss replied, though his jaw was tight. He turned to the gunnery deck. "Shift batteries. Concentrate on their lead cruiser. Ignore the rest." Hale's head snapped toward him. "We can't cripple a line that size." "We don't need the line," Voss interrupted. "We need doubt. Break their spearhead, and their formation collapses." Reluctantly, Hale nodded. The order spread, and gunners recalibrated. The Invictus surged forward, reactors burning at unsafe thresholds. Space warped around her as she hurled herself directly at the incoming fleet. The first volleys exchanged were blinding. Ketheri lances tore into the Invictus's shields, boiling against their surface. The hull shook, consoles sparked, but the ship held. In return, rail salvos hammered into the Dominion cruiser's bow, driving slugs deep into its frame. "Shields collapsing on the target," Mara cried. "Keep firing!" Voss's voice cut like steel. The Invictus twisted in space, rotating her full length so every gun along her flanks could fire in concert. The sudden maneuver violated every standard of naval doctrine, turning a massive warship like a knife edge instead of holding rigid formation. But it worked. Thousands of tons of ordnance struck the Ketheri cruiser simultaneously. The enemy's hull ruptured in a geyser of flame and metal. Secondary explosions cascaded through its decks, until the proud vessel snapped in two and drifted apart. On the Dominion flagship, silence fell across the command chamber. Zorath rose slowly, claws clicking against steel. "One of my heavy cruisers," he whispered. His voice grew into a hiss. "Destroyed. By Terrans." The adjutant dared to answer. "Their captain, he fights without rules. Like prey cornered." Zorath's gaze burned. "Prey does not kill the hunter. Unless the hunter forgets fear." He straightened, scales shimmering in cold light. "I will remind them why the Dominion endures. Crush that ship. Leave nothing intact." Back aboard the Invictus, the bridge pulsed with energy. For the first time, the crew looked at the crimson icons without despair. They had done the impossible, shattered a Dominion heavy cruiser. Hale exhaled slowly. "They're not invincible." Voss nodded once. "No. But they are furious. And fury is dangerous." The sensors screamed, an entire fleet accelerating at full thrust, weapons primed. The storm was finally here. Voss gripped the railing, voice steady. All stations prepare. History remembers those who endure. Today, we write it in fire. The Kethri fleet surged like a tide, filling every vector of the tactical map with crimson. Dozens of capital ships aligned in perfect formation, their weapons glowing like a wall of suns. Against them, the Invictus stood alone, shields flickering, armor scarred, but unbroken. Captain Adrian Voss felt the vibration under his boots as another salvo struck. The bridge shuddered, lights dimming before the generators pushed back. Smoke curled from a ruined console, and somewhere deep in the ship, alarms wailed without pause. Shields at 30%, Mara reported, her voice steady only by force of will. Hale leaned close, her face pale but resolute. We can't outlast them. One more concentrated volley and we're finished. Then we won't wait for it, Voss said. His tone was iron, as if certainty itself could shield the ship. He turned toward the helmsman. Plot a slingshot trajectory. Use Vera Prime's gravity to swing us behind their line. The helmsman blinked. Sir, that's suicidal. One miscalculation and... Do it, Voss cut in. His gaze swept the deck. If we sit still, we die. If we move, we might kill their commander. That's the only way this ends. Silence gripped the bridge. Then Hale straightened. Helm, you heard the captain. Slingshot course, maximum burn. Engines roared, pressing the crew into their harnesses. The Invictus dove toward the planet's gravity well, alarms screaming as inertial dampeners strained. The viewports filled with the swollen curve of Vera Prime, its clouds swirling far too close for comfort. Strike fire rained down from pursuing destroyers. Hull plating blistered, venting debris into the void. Bulkheads groaned. Still the Invictus pushed deeper into the pull of the planet, using danger itself as a weapon. Trajectory locked. Helm gasped, sweat streaking his brow. No, Voss ordered. The ship arced in a violent curve, gravity hurling her outward at terrifying velocity. The Invictus shot past the Kethri line, behind their wall of battleships, straight toward the heart of their formation, the flagship. Gasps broke across the bridge as the enemy's colossal vessel loomed, a fortress of black steel crowned with command spires. Voss pointed. Target their flagship. Every battery we have. Hale's eyes widened. All their fire will be on us. Then we'd better fire faster, Voss replied. The Invictus unleashed everything. Rail cannons thundered in synchronized fury, missile pods emptied in rolling waves, and lances of plasma streaked across the gap. Explosions rippled along the flagship's shields, tearing chunks from its outer hull. On the Dominion throne, High Marshal Zoreth rose to his full height, scales glittering in the glow of alarms. Focus all fire! Annihilate them! The response was immediate. Dozens of cruisers wheeled about, torrents of energy slamming into the Invictus. Shields shattered. Deck plates buckled. Fires ripped through corridors. Casualty reports flooded the comms. Engineering to bridge! Reactor 3 offline! Containment failing! Seal it and reroute power! Hale snapped. Another impact rocked the ship, nearly throwing Voss from his station. The deck crew clung to consoles, eyes wide with smoke and fire around them. Shields gone! Mara shouted. We're down to armor! Voss stood tall despite the chaos. Bring us closer. We finish this or we die anyway. The Invictus closed the gap, a burning leviathan dragging herself through hell. The flagship loomed larger with every second. Primary batteries locked, the gunnery chief reported, coughing through smoke. Point-blank range. Fire. Rail slugs tore into the flagship's central spine. Explosions ripped through its hull, venting atmosphere in geysers of fire. A final volley punched through its reactor core. The Dominion flagship erupted in a cataclysmic blast, light washing over the battlefield. On the Invictus, cheers broke through the smoke and blood. They're pulling back! Mara cried. Fleet cohesion collapsing! Hale stared at the tactical map, disbelief etched into her face. They've lost command. They're retreating. For a heartbeat, the impossible hung in silence. Humanity had broken the unbreakable. But the cost was everywhere: burned consoles, injured crew, whole breaches bleeding air into the void. The Invictus was alive, but barely. Voss eased into his chair, every muscle heavy. His uniform was torn, his hands blackened by soot. He exhaled slowly, eyes on the retreating red icons. Invincible, he whispered, voice raw. No more. The comms crackled, Governor Aaron, voice trembling. Captain Voss, you saved us. He almost laughed, though it came out as a cough. Not saved, Governor. Just bought time. Hale turned, her gaze sharp despite exhaustion. The Dominion won't forget this. They'll come back with everything. They will, Voss said. His eyes hardened. And when they do, they'll know humanity doesn't bow. Not anymore. The bridge fell quiet. The crew looked at their captain, at the shattered flagship burning in the void. Fear remained, but beneath it lay something new: resolve. For the first time in history, the Dominion had been bloodied. The myth was broken. And the war had only just begun.